Right. So this is the much awaited Sunday, the 4th of September. It's 11 a.m. IST. It's morning in India and afternoon in Australia. And we have a wonderful panel of poets joining us for this wonderful session, that we thought that we must have as soon as possible. And we decided to call it A Home in Poetry, Readings Against Violence. Violence in many forms has been rampant across the world in the last few months, particularly. Once the biological violence of COVID declined, we humans decided to, keep up the level of violence globally by perpetuating wars, by, backstabbing people, by stabbing people physically, psychologically. And I think it all, brought the writing community together when Salman Rushdie was attacked for a book that he wrote so many years ago. So I was 2 years old when this controversial book was published, and I feel that I have grown, but the world around me has not grown. It has stuck to what it believed to be right, and its right has not changed, and it was accomplished, so many years later. So, what does it actually mean to talk about safe spaces in a world like this? What does it actually mean to talk about love, faith, hope? And what does it mean to have poetry as a medium not only of exchange of ideas, of expression, but also as a medium of communion by which we form a community of like-minded people, uh, talking back to certain groups which still do not, kind of accept this epistemology of love. So I think it was these many ideas that we had in mind when Jenny sir and myself were talking about a reading session that must take place to talk about what home and what safety means to us. So here we go. And to welcome you all officially, formally, I would invite Professor Jaideep Salangi.
Thank you. Good morning from India and good afternoon to Australia. It's really amazing notions of poetry that bind Australia and India so close. The Hearth Within, the poetic platform for poetry and reading poetry and the poets. This special program or the event is a home in poetry as already defined the objective of today's program by Dr. Bashudhara Roy, the readings against violence. And in this particular reading, we have with us three very amazing and prolific poets, writers, and artists from Australia. And Jane Webb, creative practice, professor of creative practice, a writer of repute, and a great teacher as well. Uh, Jane Webb is based in Canberra, University of Canberra. Then Max Ryan and Rob Harle, very familiar names in India as well. Both are from New South Wales. Max and Rob are very popular and they are artists for excellence as well. Myself and Rob, we have come out with our eighth collections of poetry. We can say is on the way to be published, and it's a bridge between the two amazing nations. Welcome, Jane, Max, and Rob to this very unique poetry event on Sunday. I hope you are busy.
Uh, is Jaideep sir not audible to me, or is he not audible at all?
I think it's frozen. I can't
Yeah,
hear.
I also feel there's some network issue at his end.
Can
Right,
hear,
I'm sure he'll be back with us.
we can hear now. Yeah.
I'll just give him a call to tell him we cannot hear him.
Just come here. In trouble hearing.
He's left the meeting now. I'm sure he'll join again. We used to joke about it that in India, this was prior to COVID. We used to make a joke that in India, it's not enough to just email people. You have to, call them up and tell them that I have emailed you. So it's just like that, it's not enough to be on Meet. You'll have to call people and tell them we can't hear you, though we are together on Meet. We have had some rains here lately. There was a cyclone. Almost 2,500 homes were broken in Jharkhand. And I'm sure that where Jaideep sir is right now, even those places were badly affected.
I must admit that it's such a pleasure to see all of you online. Robert, hi.
Hi,
Yes,
nice to see you again.
yeah, good to see you. Durga, hello.
Namaskar.
Namaskar, namaskar. It's a pleasure, and I'm really happy that the Hearth Within is, conducting such lovely sessions every now and then, because it's always good to hear poets and good to have a platform.
Yes.
So I think while Jaideep sir is still trying to join us, I think we can just begin with the,
Yes.
we can begin. And to begin, we will go in the same order as we have in the poster. And I would like to invite Durga Prasad Panda. Durga Prasad Panda is an accomplished bilingual poet who has been widely published in magazines, journals, and anthologies across India and internationally. He is a senior statistician by profession, but then his literary interests keep drawing him to writing, to prose and poetry. At times, he also dabbles in artworks, he indulges in photography, and we hope that we will be able to identify these various strands of art in the poems that he will be reading for us. So, Durgada, welcome to The Hearth Within, and it's over to you for your wonderful poems.
Thank you, Vasudhara, for such sweet and nice words about my poetry. I am happy and a bit nervous at the same point of time. I'll be reading some 4 or 5 poems, and let me see how I fare. My first poem will be Snakes in the City, titled Snakes in the City. I live in the city of snakes. I live in the city of snakes. In my courtyard lies a snake. From above the door hangs a snake. On my bed stretches flat a snake. On my rooftop sunbaths a snake. From within the skull's eye sockets drinks a snake. In gay abandon, they move around, flicking their forked tongues, winding their way through the narrow streets, gardens, graveyards, offices, bus stops, markets, and playgrounds. One can see the black and white crates scurrying past the courtrooms, copper-colored cobras hissing from within the temples and shrines, dark brown pythons in police stations sit erect, craning their necks, ready to pounce. Water vipers floating around the swimming pools and lakes. The snakes have taken over the entire city, its nooks, corners, crossings. In some dark nights, a glistening serpent makes its way into my bedroom and snuggles around my frail body, coiling me tight. These days, I too move around, I too crawl around, carrying its lethal ruse in my dark blue veins. My second poem, Sita, a poem. Hacked flawlessly neat from below. Hacked flawlessly neat from below. A woman is a continuous rupture, searing deep through her body and soul. Rupture is her hope. She carries inside the bag of her skin. She lives inside it her entire life. Whenever I see the earth cracked, I peep into the dark crater to look for the woman lost inside it. Third poem, Falling Apart. Now finally, I have come to declare a ceasefire. Now finally, I have come to declare a ceasefire against my own body, with whom I have fought all these years. Now my body looks like a war-ravaged skinscape, a fallen city, torn asunder by strife. My two hands are at war with each other. Feet are vagabonds of the worst order, always ready to drift apart. They even threaten to secede. My dreamless liquid eyes have hardened into a slippery stone. My tongue is actually an unleashed dog, barking endlessly at its own shadow. My fingers carry nothing but scorn on their tips. This ruined, desolate heart pumps only blood of betrayal. From within the despair of my battered soul rise long sighs like dark columns of smoke. Sitting across the sad white corridor of my bones, I go on kneading the dough of my pain, trying hard to bake some soft bread of hope. Third poem, When the Day Dies. Am I audible, Vasudhara?
You're
When the day-
perfectly audible, perfectly audible.
When the day dies, just slog it off. When the day dies, just slog it off. Don't try to hold it back. Allow it to crack. Allow it to slip through the cracks of your fingers. Throw the day into the waste paper basket like a crumpled sheet of paper. When the day dies, don't raise any hue and cry. Thank God. Thank God just for being alive, without even a scratch mark on your translucent skin. Let the darkness spread itself thick on your palm like butter and taste it on the tip of your tongue. When the day dies, give it a decent burial and leap into the night. Next poem, Wife, a prose poem. Time and again, I appear for the crucial test of my fertility. Time and again, I appear for the crucial test of my fertility, plowed by men for ages. I am just a clod of soft, fleshy earth, a swampy patch of forest. Each time, with the sticky flow of my menstrual blood, a part of me gets flushed down the drain. From deep within me, I lost a little of myself. Out there, the world knows I am available for your precious seeds. ready to be sown each season and bear fruit. I go on polishing the hard stone of your male ego to keep it shining bright all the time. I know all the dark conspiracies behind keeping me all lush green. Getting cheated thus, knowing each one of your sinister design falls slowly into a habit. A faint smile, however, keeps playing at the corner of my lips. What else to do? What else to do when all the escape routes lead to newer, darker hells? And when one's most intimate enemy sleeps beside you, I soak into myself all the fire and heat of his disgusting body and burn alongside him, turning myself into a smoldering mound of ashes. At times I feel like spitting on his sweat-soaked face. But at that precise moment, he looks like the most pitiable beast crawling on this earth. I wonder if I am that cursed patch of land which couldn't crack open into fragments, despite bearing loads of same shimmering anger and a lifetime of humiliation put together. But still I carry inside my dark womb the fetus of a bright, innocent morning sun. Can I go for the last poem? Do I have time?
Yes, please.
One more, just one.
Yes, sure, please.
The poem is titled Today. Today no one was killed by the unknown assailants. No one was assaulted on the lonely street. Not a single drop of blood was shed anywhere in God's name. No one was threatened with dire consequences today. Today no house was ransacked. No mosque was razed to dust anywhere. Today no one was molested. Not even a single hymen was broken without consent. Today not a single bride was burned. No child was sold anywhere for a handful of rice. Strangely, no one was hacked to death, despite speaking the truth fearlessly. Today was really a perfect day. Today, the newspapers of the country were on a day's token strike. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you,
Wonderful,
Durga, for
wonderful.
those wonderful poems. And I'm particularly glad that you chose to read out that last poem. I have read the poem before in an anthology that was edited by Professor Jaideep Sarangi. And I loved how the poem closes, the note of irony on which the poem closes. So thank you very much. And we take the fetus of an innocent, bright sun with us, and we pray for that fetus to be within us as we read today against violence. Thank you. And next, we would like to invite Jen Webb. And just briefly to introduce Jen, though she needs no introduction, of course. Jen Webb is Distinguished Professor of Creative Practice at the University of Canberra and Dean, Graduate Research Office. She was the inaugural director of the Center for Creative and Cultural Research and remains a core member of that center. So she works with creative practice in academia, and her works include lyric and prose poetry, short fictions, and artist books. We hope that Jen today will bring all these various areas of creative and academic practice into her poetry, and we look forward to her poems. Over to you, Jen.
Thank you so much. And I have to say, it's a genuine honor to be invited to participate. And I loved your poems. They're super. I haven't read you before, so it was lovely to hear you. Now, it's violence and home. And I thought about bringing these things, like everybody, like almost everybody around the globe. I've been utterly shocked and devastated by the attack on Salman Rushdie and the attacks and this insecurity and suffering so many people in the planet are facing. And I'm quite easily shocked. So most of my poems are a bit bleak, they're a bit sad and grim. But I've been thinking lately about thinking of poetry as home And I want to live in a home that is infused with hope and not with despair. Poetry really needs to be my home because I've been a citizen or permanent resident of 5 nations now, and I've lived in several other countries. I love them all in their own ways, but none of them are actually mine. I don't feel that deep embodied sense of belonging there at all. So I do have to think of poetry as home, and the planet is where my home is located, and all the things on that planet as, you know, I owe them respect, I owe them empathy. So I'm going to read, I think, 4 poems about the lived world, and that's all I can do really in terms of resistance at the moment, because, you know, as Auden said, poetry makes nothing happen. The first one is Harmonices Mundi, and I've stolen the title and the idea of this first poem from a book written by the astronomer Johannes Kepler, who published a book by that name in 1619. It means the harmony of the world, and his idea is that there are harmonies that play between the planets. If you look at where they're located, you can see music happening. And he actually rather beautifully thought that sometimes planets sing together. That's such a magical idea. Of course, it's not true as far as we know, but I like the idea of it. I know nothing about astronomy. I know not much about music, but I like to imagine how this planet, how our planet might sing. So, Harmonices Mundi. We are singing, the lot of us under moonless sky. Music is shifting shape. Banksia man slowly turning his head, clearing his pipes, letting a 1 and a 2 and a 3 shiver his languid limbs. Bark drifts slowly, trying to syncopate, while the magpies carol out their version of the mazurka. Eventually, even the world, as it deigns to join the choir, throwing back its head, letting the sound rip. We can't hear it, of course, but still we know it, the music into which we were born, that universal key. In the summer of 2019 and 2020, huge chunks of Australia were experiencing the worst fires recorded. And all I could think about through those months was how badly settler Australia has treated this island continent, how poorly we've behaved and how much we've lost. And I thought that maybe kindness and also being practical might be a way to begin healing. So I wrote this poem bang in the middle of the fires, and I called it the science of kindness. It's 1 minute before the scheduled departure time, and she is running up the stairs, across the bridge and down, and as her left foot hits the platform, her train is there. Someone helps her on board. Someone moves up to make room for her, and then the doors close. She'll be home within a few hours, fires permitting. No clear idea of what's waiting for her there. The train rolls through the suburbs and out into the wild. The cat in her bag is working its way free, and the sun is going down, a silhouette against the flames, and the moon is coming up, red on red. Her phone turns itself off and she places it gently in her pocket, leans back in her seat, closes her eyes. The third one I've called Written in Skin, and this is maybe not quite, this is more about loss and gain memory, I think. And the title actually is the first bit of the poem too, so I'll read it again. Written in skin, which doubles as page, folds into book. I turn my hand, my arm, reading lines of thought inscribed there, scenting memory. Once you wrote on it with your body, but now those lines have faded. Now I've forgotten the ways you held me, the weight of that pendant between my breasts, the last gasp of a faulty shower in a cheap hotel. I've forgotten the houses we shared, every photo I misplaced. But my skin remembers the scent of grass in winter, the touch of linen in spring, remembers all the hands that tried to read it. Skin recalls them all, turns those sensations over and over, impressing them in memory. And the last one I've called Past Imperfect, mostly because I like grammar. So I like terms like past imperfect, which come from grammar, but also because it's about accommodating ourselves to how the world changes. Everything we want is in the pawnbroker's window, and we stand on crumbled concrete, faces to the glass like children outside candy stores. Toward the back is your old typewriter, the one you used to write your love letters, and later your suicide note, and later still the I made it through story that had your mum and me weeping in relief. Look, there's the baby's cradle you built out of Lego blocks, where I laid our child each night or swaddled. There's a silver cup I won for dressage, the medals from your athletics career. There's your dad's ribbons from the war that he wore only once, when someone pinned them to his chest and he stood to attention, eyes fixed in his famous 1,000-yard stare. If I had the cash, I'd redeem the love seat we pawned to pay bills I can't recall, redeem family portraits painted by that famous artist who died full of years and cocaine, redeem the teddy bear I loved, the first camera you owned, the cassette tapes with our children's first words. Let it go, you say, and I do. I think I do. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Jen. This is really beautiful poetry. Thank you so much. And from Canberra let's move on to Lismore, Australia, New South Wales. Now we invite Rob Harle to read his poems. Rob Harle needs no introduction because he has edited so many anthologies with Indian fellow editors. And Rob is an artist for excellence, and Rob is an amazing poet. Over to Rob Harle.
Thank you, JD. I hope I can live up to your introduction. I'll just do two poems. First one is called Travelling Light, which I think will resonate with Indian people really strongly. Travelling Light. Mohandas Gandhi travelled light, a loincloth, a shawl, round glasses, his meagre trademark, favouring the freedom of the everyman. Over the encumbrances of wealth and power, he lit a blazing candle so all the world could see the path to freedom. Defying the overlords of authority, the power brokers of control, through non-violent civil resistance, he lit an eternal light, dissipating the curse of colonialism, the superiority of British rule, diluting insidious religious contamination. Fear not, Gandhi, like Nelson Mandela,
Yeah, थोड़ी नहीं, please.
King Jr.
मेरा program चौपट मत करो.
Sorry?
It's okay. Yeah.
Like Martin Luther King Jr., your imprisonment by the fearful cowards was not in vain. Now his way is embraced by the everyman, saving our forests and the earth herself, saving the poor from ruthless domination, empowering the powerless, a way with dignity and with no blood shed. Mahatma Gandhi, the venerable one, great soul, your own blood was not shed in vain. The next one is called Requiem for the Old Dart. Just to explain, the old dart is a term that the English used when they returned to the Dartmouth River after their exploitations of the world to colonialise us all. When they were sailing back, they'd say it'd be good to see the old dart again. So this one is called Requiem for the Old Dart. In days of old, the serfs were sold and England's kings and queens were bold. But now the writing's on the wall, from Sydney Cove to Downing Street and all. The Republican's flag is biting deep. Behind closed doors, the lonely royalists weep. A hope to fly the jack from yards of old that now are paved with guiltless green and gold. And where's the colours black, yellow, red? Indigenous culture shattered, nearly dead. The sacred land is being torn apart. It's time to listen and repair her crippled heart. For God and Commonwealth we bled, now Commonwealth and God are dead. And where the hell's this wealth so common? In vaults beneath a throne bequeathed by flogging. So computer chips spew out the news from satellites in front row pews. But still the stallions drag the carriage of last century's most celebrated marriage. But remember, when the colony becomes oppressive, there'll always be in England a land of cold and pain, of superiority, pomp and circumstance, and reign and reign and reign. Thank you.
That's wonderful, Rob.
Wonderful, wonderful, Rob. Thank you so much. Thank you. From Rob Harle, let's move to another person from New South Wales. I think it's Max Rain. Over to Max. Max is also a very familiar name in India.
Thanks.
Has been anthologized widely. Over to Max. Hello. Looking forward.
Okay, I'd like to read a poem called Varanasio. I spent a lot of time in India, and this was a poem I've worked on from another poem, but it reminds me a bit of Anweshwa's just before. But anyway, Varanasi. They cry out to the night sky as if they're drowning, swing their heads to rhythms that thrash through my limbs, that thrash through their limbs. 4 blind beggars, each holding the shoulder of the one in front, have stopped in the street before me. I know their song. This world is not real. This place is not my home. Break this spell of illusion. Set me free. Set me free. I stare into their faces, join in their chorus, till I spin on glazed white moons of their eyes. I'm holding on to the last beggar as we move through the crowd, afraid to let go. I hear my voice unravel on the thread of a long, shrill cry. A street lamp flickers through the curtain onto a blistered wall of my hotel room. I close the door softly, hold the creaky railing down to the dim-lit street. Outside a tea shop, a man stoops to part a dusty curtain. A dog barks as I pass a huddle of blanketed bodies. A hiss of cymbals. Voices come closer. 4 beggars sway out of the dark, calling my name. Thank you. This one's called Lather. I was in the hospital after a massive car accident when I was younger, and this was an incident I witnessed. It's really a love story, really, of a father for his son. And I'd like to honor my 2 lads, Kishore and Cordell, being Father's Day here. This one's called Lather. Each day after breakfast, the old man comes to the hospital with the morning paper and a Gladstone bag full of shaving gear. His son is dying, the nurse tells you. A tumor on the brain. Weeks later, across the aisle on your own bed, you'll glimpse in the arc of a flashlight his newly bandaged head and ashen skin before the pad of feet and ring of winding curtains. But every morning, the old man brings the newspaper his son will be the first to open and seats him in a chair on the concrete floor of the courtyard and listens while his son reads out some piece of news, and the father quietly shuffles around him and in one unbroken motion drapes a white towel over his shoulders and chest and dips a shaving brush into a mug of hot water. You can tell the old man has done this many times in other places, but now this time is the only time. Now there is only pale winter sun on a sandstone wall and the background hum of General Ward 10 as an old man rubs a cake of soap into smooth white froth to dab onto his son's fresh stubble, and with one hand lightly cupping his jaw, scrapes at the skin of his upturned face with the just wetted edge of a thin cold blade before the lather can harden and dry. This is a big, thank you. I'll read a couple more. I'll come back to India. This one's a bit of a, Robert probably relate to this. It's kind of a hippie, the voice through a sort of hippie, and he's actually Adam, the original Adam, and it's called Adam Talks Back. Man, we had it all back then. Everything that grows up or down, just eat it right there. Paradise, especially with a beautiful lady like Eve. For eternity, we were told in the beginning. Yeah, I've heard the talk about some tree of knowledge, but I'm still left in the dark. Man, I always thought the garden was for us. Who's going to get uptight about one little apple anyway? And then that angel just rocking up, pretending he wasn't checking Eve over, like he'd never seen a naked woman before. Made us feel like we'd done something really terrible, talking in that Holy Joe voice as he hustled us out of the garden. Man, I'd sooner hang about with that serpent any day. At least he had nice manners. Kind of a drag we both need to work these days, the old sweat of the brow. He even shopped for our fruit and vegetables, would you believe? Water in plastic bottles. Still, Eden Springs is a nice little suburb, and Cain and Abel are doing really well at the local primary. No hassles about God laying some trip on us either. Come to think of it, we haven't heard too much from God of late. I'm starting to wonder if he's still around. This one's called Taking Down the Tents. And I grew up in a place called Newcastle where the shows used to come to town, the massive, and everything was there. Taking down the tents. His limbs are spring-loaded as he throws off his shirt and heaves the long-handled hammer into the tent peg. The girl watches the center post wobble, the canopy lift, then slowly billow down. Not long before, she kissed him goodbye on a blanket in the gap between two guy ropes. Late into the night, the spinning wheels swirled shadows onto the tent sheet behind them, and she could see past the darting lights to a still bed of stars. She douses her face with hose water, still cool at early morning, and dabs on lipstick. Throws the last look his way before she heads to the gate. He's locked in with the boys as they drag the heavy canvas over the ground, downing cold bottles of Coke and howling rock and roll from last night's Dodge and Car jukebox. As she waits at the bus stop, she sees the high-back truck heading for the highway, smiles at the 10-foot mural of a clown with long red tongue and fluo green eyes, dancing on a wave of white tent tops, curled on the edge of the sky. How are we going? Have I got time for one or two? I will anyway.
Yes,
I'll come back to India. I've got a poem called Journey of the Beatles fans. Actually saw the Beatles when I was just a young teenager, and I've modeled it on Eliot's Journey of the Magi. So I'll just go to my book here. Yeah, here we are. Sorry, this one's from. I basically just taken Eliot's prose and mimicked it in a way. Let's see if I can find it. I'll read it. I've probably only got time for that one. I'll read a poem set in India too. This is about a young friend of mine who died in Australia, but he always said he'd die at 21. But this is said in India, and the epigraph is from Shelley's Alastor. The good die first, and those whose hearts are dry as summer dust burn to the socket. We sat under the walls of the desert fort, gazing over the valley. The hillside was ringed with broken stone walls, staking the ruins of the old city. I sucked on the thin hash joint you'd made back in Jaipur. The sun had fallen behind us, and a maze of crumbled amber swam in soft cold light. We were silent for a long time before you wheezed. So beautiful. I could die just now. Then you started laughing, letting it carry down the rocky pathway out across the dunes. I laughed too, though not as long. Never sure how far the joke extended. We waited till the light had almost gone, then walked back. Then we walked back down. Your clouded lungs had slowed you to my limping gait. I, who'd risen like Lazarus, shattered back into life, stood there, palms pressed together, holding your gaze as I drove away, pretending I'd see you again. Time that takes everything. You saw it coming and stared back into its teeth. I can hear your gravel cough sliding into madcap laughter. Or maybe it's the sound of the desert wind driving us all down to dust. As if Lazarus doesn't just get old and die. We love this earth, despite its one short promise. We love it while we can.
Thank you for those lovely poems. And
Thank you so
I
much.
had read in your bio that you also had studied at Banaras Hindu University. So that's where I studied too. And it's so good to be able to listen to your beautiful poems today. Thank you. And from here we move over to, we come back to India and we come to Lucknow. Professor Ranu Uniyal. She's a bilingual poet from Lucknow. She is professor and head of department English, has written 4 books of poetry, and she has most recently brought out a collection of Hindi poems also, Saida Ka Ghar, which has got wonderful reviews. And Ranu ma'am, just to trouble you a little, I would also, request you to read, along with English poems, I would also request you to read from your latest collection. She also works for people with special needs in Lucknow. And she brings all these ideas very beautifully together in both the languages that she writes in. So over to you, Ranu.
Vasudha, thank you, Joydeep, for inviting me to this session. It's an honor, but I must make Joydeep and Vasudha, I completed in February, so I'm now just a teacher in the department. You see, we are living in find that the earth has dried up, and so has our pen. And our ink leaves no traces of our sweat, blood, and tears. Sad ones who spoke of peace and love have been wiped off, and we with bullets, blunts, and bombs. I will be reading my first poem, which was published in a journal called Turning Pages. And the title of this poem is If Only. We see that in our scriptures, we know that Nachiketa was the one who defied death and bravely, and who could answer all the questions that were posed by Yam. If only. Stitch not the wounds, show the space that is hollow. Fear not, lest they decide and you dread sipping the abominable sweat. Thing ever sings. Only brave Nachiketa's voice remains inside the chest, clogged by the vertebrae of questions. Of soaring spirit, Yam had no knowledge. If only the wise had spared their guts, life would not have plunged into darkness. Thank you. We are all in one voice condemning the attack on Salman Rushdie. In a city of riots, how violence does spread any love. It leads to nothing but destruction, dismay, and anarchy. In a city of riots, will you draw for me a neat house with as many rooms as nights of love? Will you gather in your arms my dissolving flesh and comfort me with a promise of return, even if I know it is our last together? Will you bring me shards of energy from the main bazaar? Where will you go when the shutters are down after the weekend rides? Will you embrace me tight as you get a tossing glimpse of an enemy with toxins? Will you erase my belief that the world is seeking not a saint, but a rebel to set itself free from the scab? Will you scrub me clean with mud from the Dead Sea and the water from the Ganges? Perhaps in confession, and search for hands innocent before the crime? Will you defy the scriptures and devote a new tongue with Om, Amen, and Allah, inscribed in it as signifiers of one and the right? Will you sing of everlasting joy, Anand, when bereft of feeling, unattached and distant, I will betray all bones and smash your bristling trust with one stroke of a staggering lie? Thank you.
Wonderful.
This is a poem, The Audacity of Living. As and when you came into this world, did they tell you that stars only twigs to welcome you? Your eyes will search for a miracle, but your skin will refuse to glow. Your mother will crush her nails, her fingers in kegs full of acid. You will encounter siblings dressed as vampires. There'll be nuns in school asking you to join the convent. You will sink with grade 8 girls into sockets of fresh blood. Your menstrual cycles will go on to rub the unhealthy sheets of cotton on your wet thighs. There will be no seasons for it. There will be seasons of cigarette and cheap vodka. Sex will be more curiosity than lust. The roads will smell of cologne in your 20s, and you will be eager to sever the spill of romance. Chrysanthemums will add to your life, and you will hope some gentleman would pick up the thorns and make it worthwhile. Suddenly, the ghosts, the vampires and the witches, the nails, the blood, the dark alleys, the crush and the pain, the womb and the twigs will all get together and bring your stretch to a standstill, but will once again refuse to die. The title of this poem is A Dust Storm in the Middle of the Night. It was one dark yellow evening, and the stars had gone inside, and the sky, shameless but proud of its early naked, opened its arms for the moon to recline. Nothing stirred in the winds, as if there were enough sins to wrap around the earth, distant and quiet, blood, sweat, and tears to cope with there on that daring night, not out of nowhere, but from the hungry pregnant mothers, from the uneven mouths of half-clad children, the disembodied spirits of the young who had been raped on the nights when her husband was not around. The silent fire of Godhra, the unshed tears of Bamiyan Buddha, the blasts at the trains, ripped nameless bodies lost in the act of vengeance, unaccounted tales but few to narrate, sullied wombs gripped with tireless determination to hang on to life, to nature, to Mother Earth, to mothers of all the fathers, sons, soldiers, statesmen, to all who had once been inside her womb, a burning question, a haunting disquiet. How often will history repeat itself, leaving her to write another script without rain, without sunshine? This is one last poem, which is in Hindi. The title of this poem is Dard, Pain. वो भी मेरा ना हुआ, वो भूल कर भी मेरा ना हुआ, मैंने समझा था जिसे मंजिल मेरी, वो तो महज तूफान था कभी। एक उफनते सैलाब का तमाशा देखा मैंने, एक उफनते हुए सैलाब का तमाशा देखा मैंने, हर बरसती हुई आंख से बारूद निकलता देखा मैंने। एक लफ्ज को नासूर की माफिक रिश्ता देखा मैंने, एक लफ्ज को नासूर की रिश्ता देखा मैंने, हर बंद मुट्ठी को इरादों से खुलता देखा मैंने। एक चौराहा था, एक चौराहा था बचा दर्द की तासीर से, एक चौराहा था बचा दर्द की तासीर से, उसको भी सहमता देखा मैंने। हर सुबह जहां शौक से पैदल चलते थे जो लोग, उनको भी दहशत से गुजरता देखा मैंने। एक रात का सन्नाटा, एक रात का सन्नाटा जो कभी बेखौफ था तेरे आने से, आज उसको भी अपनी देखा मैंने। क्या कहूँ ऐ दोस्त, कहूँ ऐ दोस्त, मंजर ही कुछ ऐसा था, खुद को बेसाख्ता बिलख मैंने। शुक्रिया।
बहुत खूब।
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank you, Ranu. Thank you for wonderful lines.
Thank you very much.
From Lucknow, one of the iconic cities of India, to the Himalayas, Almora. We welcome Syed Hamid sir for reading a few poems, and he was a professor of English and worked on Indian English poetry and has been writing in English for a long, long time. Over to Hamid sir.
Thank you, Professor Sarangi. You have been an inspiration always. And Ranuji, Durga, Jen, Max, Rob, and Basudra. I'll be reading, the first two poems are new poems. And I have sent them for publication. They'll be out soon. The first one, I took permission from Professor Sarangi to read out Ghazal. The Ghazal, as written in Urdu in India, has been derived from the Persian counterpart. It consists of between 7 to 9 couplets, and each couplet is an independent entity in itself. Each couplet may be written on a different subject within a ghazal. They are bound by a scheme of rhyme and refrain. In the first couplet, both the lines contain the rhyme or the refrain, and in the subsequent couplets, only the second line contains the rhyme or the refrain. The last couplet is carries the name of the poet. So the refrain of this ghazal is this winter. Will you go into hibernation this winter? Will your body heat survive this winter? The young rich shall play winter sports on high altitude. The young rich shall play winter sports on high altitude. The old poor shall shiver to death in the plains this winter. When she pierced him with a look laced with lust. When she pierced him with a look laced with lust, that was more than central heating for him this winter. He carried within himself a garden in his spring. He carried within himself a garden in his spring, but the cold outside made it snow this winter. April is the cruelest month, wrote T.S. Eliot. That's why we live in the wasteland this winter. For Oscar Wilde, in a loveless land it will whisper of the garden. For Oscar Wilde, in A Loveless Land, it will whisper of the garden. For lesser mortals, only lustful whispers will matter this winter. The last couplet, carrying the poet's name, Hamid no longer dreads the cold and the so-called beyond. Hamid no longer dreads the cold and the so-called beyond. The final sleep has to come, though it may not this winter. The second is a poem titled Denying Love. It's a take on Shakespeare and Donne. Denying love is easy. The burden of experience, the overpowering presence of sex, the recoiling from possessiveness admits impediments to the marriage of true minds. Shakespeare had to revise his idea of love when confronted with his dark passion for the dark lady. In the first flush of youth, when innocence rules, romantic idealism mixed with desire finds no obstacles to love immortal, because even death cannot prevail over the religious idea of the hereafter when death thou shalt die. This is from Donne. It's only when the hair turns grey, not for working under the scorching sun, but when the hammer of meaning hits, painful, cruel, unrelenting, that idealism flies out of the window and desire meaninglessness in the form of the dark lady sucks in a vortex of dry passion to live in the moment, because death never dies. Thank you. Now I'll be reading, or I think I have quite some times left. So this is, since it was against violence, so I'm reading out a 2-year-old poem on abstinence. This is, no, on terrorism. The title of the poem is Abstinence. On the steed of abstinence, he gallops, paradise on his mind, hoods waiting with open arms to embrace, rub their ample bodies on his, each attending to some erogenous zone of his body. Wearing a suicide jacket, machine gun in his hand, hatred in his heart, he showers bullets on infidels, indiscriminately, special target women, educated, independent, fashionable, but less scantily dressed than the hoods he imagines. Women to be under strict parda, illiterate serfs of men. Wine? Only in paradise. Happiness in his spilling blood. The more the killings, the more the ejaculation. When he blows himself up, the piece carrying his penis and his scrotum mounts up to paradise. Erect for the waiting hoods, eternal splendor lust with ejaculata retarda eternal. Do I have some more time left?
Yes, sir, please.
Another ghazal, if you like my first one.
Certainly, yes.
This is an older one. The refrain is go to hell. Do good things they preach, otherwise you will go to hell. If you enjoy yourself here, you will, after death, go to hell. She enticed him, using all tricks to ensnare him. But after having her fill, she told him, go to hell. He dreamt of hoods while spraying bullets indiscriminately. They had warned him, if he doesn't, he will go to hell. Vice chancellors are usually such pricks, no doubt about that. Many times exasperated, we wished but couldn't say, go to hell. He always wanted to walk into the unknown, unravel mysteries, be free, let the world go to hell. After surrendering to temptations, one eventually becomes a saint. After surrendering to temptations, one eventually becomes a saint. Saint Augustine did that, although sexual morality may go to hell. What's all this bunkum about heaven and hell, Hamid? What's all this bunkum about heaven and hell, Hamid? Don't get on my nerves, he tells them. Just go to hell. If I have a little time, I can recite one or two more. Do I have?
Sure.
तकल्लुफ में ना कहिएगा डॉक्टर सारंगी. Okay. This is caged freedom. Inside our cages, we celebrate freedom constitutional of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, carrying the burden of inheritance genetic, home, relatives, religion, and the acquired cages, property, profession, respectability, and matrimony. Everybody is not a Buddha. Walk away into the unknown, inner journey, enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. We lesser mortals dance in celebration of freedom inside our cages. No wonder Sartre said, man is condemned to be free. The last one, this is another ghazal. When I look deep inside my heart, there is silence. The refrain is, there is silence. In my room, the walls, the door, there is silence. I have spoken too much, too long, all my life. Being a teacher, I have spoken too much, too long, all my life. Now I wish to go to a place where there is silence. In the middle of a flame, there is darkness burning. When I talk to myself agitatedly, there is silence. In prosperity, his house was always abuzz with activity. In adversity, wherever he looks, searches, there is silence. A devastating beauty is always surrounded with admirers. A devastating beauty is always surrounded with admirers. But when her charm wanes, all around there is silence. I have played with words, sounds, beats, composed poetry. Now in the evening of my life, in my poems too, there is silence. Maqta कहते हैं जिसमें poet का नाम आता. You have lectured too much, Hamid. We are all fed up. You have lectured too much, Hamid. We are all fed up. For God's sake, stop this nonsense. We wish there is silence. Thank you so much. This was for all teachers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This has been a fabulous reading session, and to bring it to a beautiful end, I would request Professor Jaydeep Sarangi to conclude with one of his poems.
Yes, he must recite two, I believe.
No, I think we should start with Basudhara, our convener, to read the poem first. Yes, Basudhara, one poem. I'll read one poem to finish up. But it was wonderful morning in India and afternoon in Australia. So, but sorry for the technological glitch I had to face. Yeah, so Basudhara, read one poem. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll read a very short poem, and I think I will do it because I am intoxicated by the ghazals that have been read out. So I'll read a ghazal. It's a feminist ghazal. Okay. In your courtrooms, taught silence, I brood of light. The genesis, conscience, habitude of light. Hewn in me are your first lawgiver's edicts. I am Shatrupa to Brahma, a lute of light. Everywhere I go, I am met only in parts. vulva to tongue, shred by a crude of light. Raised in annexation to your hunger's fire, Manipur to Hatras, a vicissitude of light. Each plundered robe decries my trust. Adobe stone to dice, a lewd of light. I speak Janki to the earth's adobe womb, Surpnakha, Nangeli, my lost feud of light. In faith I exile in your continent of want, belatedly discovering the latitude of light. Your mirrors invite me to drink the dark, each time I confront your intrude of light. In all love poems, I question your intent, a taj hemorrhaged by a prelude of light. Neophyte still, who cling to history's ribs, betrayer and betrayed, a delude of light. Thank you.
Thank you. May I add a little bit? I forgot to add then that
Yes,
the
please.
ghazal, as it is written in English, we are all influenced by him, whether it's Basudra or me. It was Agha Shahid Ali, the Indian American poet, who brought the proper ghazal in English. Thank you so much. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, and Jaideep sir, it is over to you to bring this session to a conclusion with your poems.
Slow going. The white flooding jasmine morning watches. You return from last night's sleep. Each doorway is a garden we water by narrow, emphatic hearts. All are out to save erratic lives, rivers rafted, hearts from every single separate pain. Its quiet is my ears and eyes. In the wake of morning chants, you begin with the same hues. Words tease the night's dreams. Busy hours are delayed, halted, touching without being sticky, drowsy, with which long lost things shall arrive at our way now. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was really wonderful to have you in this morning and afternoon in Australia and India. Great poetic partnership between two amazing nations. We started our poetry from Durgada, from Odisha, and journeyed to Canberra, to New South Wales, to the Himalayas, to the iconic city of Lucknow, to Jamshedpur, and to ended with Kolkata. We'll connect again, and for poetry, I think through poetry, we can change lives and we can act against violence, and our risk society can be developed and can be a full growing tree against violence, against risks and threats, only through the path and the doorway of poetry. So for poetry, with poetry, and towards poetry, let us move collectively. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Ranudi. Thank you, Vashudhara. Thank you, Hamid sir. Thank you, Durgada. And thank you, everyone who are present in this poetry event. Thank you.
Special thanks to all the wonderful audience that we have
Yeah.
had, because without audience, there is, poetry does not have half of its charm without such wonderful audience. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Lakshmi,
And
for joining us.
many are writing so
Thank
good
you,
poetry in the
Rati,
audience.
Nidhi, Seema, Lalit, Pranjal, Anvesha was here, Nidhi, Namita, Kavita, so many of them. Thank you very much for joining us on this Sunday and for making it all the more beautiful. Thank you for bringing more light into the Hearth Within. Thank you very much.
Love to poetry.
Thank you.
Love to poetry and love to poetry and love to poets. Love. Thank you. Thank you. We'll meet again. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.